What's up everybody, KalipezTech here, coming back at you with another video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy A72. This phone is the direct successor of the Samsung Galaxy A71, which I thought was a really good phone. So we're going to see if this one lives up to that. Let's get started. So the Samsung Galaxy A72 has a 6.7-inch 90Hz Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 394, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen to body ratio of 84.4%. We got a real nice looking hole punch design here for the front facing camera, and this camera is 32 megapixels. So this display is really high quality. Not only does it have a Super AMOLED display, which is going to make the colors a lot brighter and more powerful than something like an LCD or a TFT display, but it also has a 90Hz refresh rate, which is significant even compared to a lot of other phones out there that are even at a higher level than this phone. For example, the iPhone 12 only has a 60Hz refresh rate versus 90Hz for this, and the way this is going to make a difference is in the motions on the screen. So take a look at this. The scrolling here is a lot faster and smoother than say this iPhone XS Max that has only a 60Hz refresh rate. So that's going to make a huge difference when it comes to things like content consumption. If you're streaming a lot of videos, then those videos are most likely going to look a little bit nicer and smoother on this phone than they would on others that don't have a 90Hz refresh rate. Another thing this is going to be good for is gaming, because gaming has a lot of graphics and animation and general motion on the screen. So again, having a 90Hz display instead of say a 60Hz display is going to make that a lot smoother. If you're playing a game on your phone, especially ones with complicated graphics, it's more likely than not that you'll be playing that game for a decent period of time. And if you are playing a game for a prolonged period of time, that 90Hz display is going to actually help your eyes, because it's going to be a lot easier and smoother on your eyes than a device with a 60Hz display would be. Now this phone is getting 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so it's definitely going to be a good amount of storage. If you're doing normal activities, maybe you have a few games here and there, maybe you like to take photos, whatever it is that you're doing, you're most likely not going to run out of storage on this phone. For the average user, 128 gigabytes is a lot of space. Now, this phone is able to shoot 4K videos. So if you are actually into shooting videos, then that's really the main situation I could see where you would really need a lot of storage. So again, in that situation, having 128 gigabytes is real good. You might even need more than that. And if you do, remember, this phone is capable of microSD card expansion, and you can put photos and videos on a microSD card, so that should still be no problem. Unfortunately, this phone does not have wireless charging, so if that is a feature that's important to you, be sure to keep that in mind. I do hope that in the future, they start implementing wireless charging into phones that don't typically have it. Right now, that's more of a flagship phone kind of thing, but I am hoping that in the future, they're going to start putting it into more mid-level phones. And I think that this is definitely possible, because recently, as I'm going to go over later, they have added some features to this phone and the Samsung Galaxy A52 that before were really only a flagship phone thing. So the features are slowly trickling down, so that's a good sign. So as far as security goes, this phone has not only face unlock, but also a fingerprint scanner. The fingerprint scanner is right here in the display. Looks really nice and modern. Let's give it a try. There we go. One more time. Not quite as fast as an external fingerprint scanner or a fingerprint scanner on one of the flagship phones like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, for example, but it is really fast, and I would personally consider it good enough for me. Now, taking a look at the rear camera setup of this phone, we have a 64 megapixel rear camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, an 8 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. So this phone not only has all the basic features you would expect from a mid-level smartphone, but it also has the one camera feature that's usually only on flagship phones, and that's a telephoto lens. Telephoto lenses are probably my favorite camera feature of all time. Not only can you use it basically like a macro camera, but you can also use it, of course, to zoom in on a faraway subject without losing quality. And I think that that's real nice to have on a camera. So that is one huge advantage that the Samsung Galaxy A72 has over most other phones in its class, even other Samsung phones like the Samsung Galaxy A52 that are really similar to this phone don't have the same advantage that the telephoto lens gives this phone. Now that being said, this phone does have a macro camera as well. And honestly, I'm really not that sure why, because I don't think it was very necessary given that this phone has the telephoto lens too. But I'm not complaining. The way I see it, the more camera features that you can have, the better. So overall, this phone pretty much has it all. So this is a picture taken with the rear camera of the phone. Definitely not bad at all. The quality is definitely there. And one thing that I really like about this phone's camera is how good the autofocus is. I didn't even have it in portrait mode and it still blurred out parts that weren't part of the subject really well. Overall, I think that whether you're using the phone just for fun, taking pictures for casual purposes, or if you don't even hardly ever use the camera at all, or if you're actually trying to do something with the camera, like shooting photos and videos for a website, or doing social media stuff a lot, no matter what the situation is, this phone is gonna have a good enough camera to take care of all of it. Now this is a picture actually taken by the telephoto lens. So you can see it basically looks like a macro camera picture. It has all those really close-up details, looks really sharp. It wasn't distorted at all, which I really like. And this is a picture taken by the macro camera. Now, I'm really curious to hear your opinion. Do you think the macro camera is even useful when the phone has a telephoto lens? Because I personally don't think so. I think the photo taken with the telephoto lens looks pretty much the same as the picture taken with the macro camera. And because of that, I don't really see a purpose for the macro camera, just because since you can use the telephoto lens anyway, there's really not that much of a use. But do you see much of a difference? Definitely let me know in the comments. Now this is a picture taken with the ultra-wide camera. This ultra-wide camera is really good. Usually an ultra-wide camera is gonna have some sort of distortion around it, but this one really doesn't. It's super high quality, looks really good. So we're doing a quick video sample with the Samsung Galaxy A72. We're shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second. Also keep in mind the audio quality. And that was a quick video sample for this phone. As you can see, it was able to shoot in 4K, which I think is really impressive, especially for a phone that's still relatively affordable. This video quality is really good. If you're really shooting a lot of videos often, then this is definitely gonna come in handy. Really, the only time you're gonna need a whole lot more is if you're trying to get something super cinematic as far as the quality goes. And even then, I think this phone is really capable of a lot. Now, internally, the Samsung Galaxy A72 is getting 8 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it came back with a single core score of 553. In a multi-core score of 1657. Not really bad, but I honestly expected a little bit more. This is actually a tiny bit less processing power than the previous model, the Samsung Galaxy A71. And that really did get me thinking, why exactly is it around the same or even slightly lower? These scores are pretty much in the ballpark of the predecessor, the Samsung Galaxy A71, so it's not really that much of an improvement. That being said, the A71 was a good phone and did have decent processing power, but I'm not really too impressed by this just because of all the other options out there. This really doesn't stand out a whole lot. That being said, you're gonna be able to do pretty much anything that's not a super high-end activity. Typical tasks like social media and internet browsing are gonna be no problem. When you get into gaming, I would say that games that aren't too complicated as far as graphics go are gonna be okay. If you have something like Fortnite that has just an insane amount of processing power that it needs, that might be a little tough on this phone. Same thing with video editing that involves large files. Other than that, most tasks should be pretty much okay. Now this phone has a 5000 milliamp hour battery that supports 25 watt fast charging, and that's pretty much the best you can get. So you're gonna be getting not only the best life per charge, but also, as far as longevity goes, all batteries degrade, but this one's gonna degrade a lot slower. In comparison, the iPhone 12 has a 2815 milliamp hour battery, so this phone's battery is almost double the size. Now, as far as other features go, this phone does have NFC, and it also has dust and water resistance, two features that are typically higher end phone features. And I am impressed by that because while NFC is definitely getting more widely used in other phones that aren't flagship phones, dust and water resistance is a lot less common, so it's nice to see it on a phone like this. Now, in conclusion, is this phone worth buying in 2021? I definitely think it is in most situations. This phone has improved in pretty much every way from the Samsung Galaxy A71. It has a nice Super AMOLED display, it looks really good, and it's a 90Hz display, which means all the movement on the screen, whether you're streaming videos or playing a game, is all gonna be a little bit better. The camera is absolutely an improvement, the storage is great, and it has some nice features like dust and water resistance to go along with all that. The only thing that I'm really not a huge fan of is the processor, and that's only because it wasn't really a clear improvement. It was almost the same as far as performance specs go. And I was hoping for something a little bit better. But that being said, even the processor isn't something I'd consider bad. It was just a little bit underwhelming. And the other thing that I'm not a huge fan of is the design of the body, because it is a little bit thick, and you would expect a successor of a really good phone to be even thinner. That's the way things are normally going, but that really is only an aesthetic thing, so it's not too much of a concern. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.